Could you say and spell your name for me, please?
Sure. Scott Lawson, SCOTT LAWSON.
And where are you based out of?
I'm in Burlington, Vermont.
At the University
At
of
the
Vermont.
University of Vermont.
Which college, school, department do you?
I'm in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, but also do a little bit of work over in Department of Geography and Geosciences.
So one of the things that you're presenting about today is design floods. And I can see exactly why civil and environmental engineer would be interested to learn how a flood behaves, because you can't just make a flood happen.
Yeah.
What is a design flood?
So design floods are what we use oftentimes to design a lot of infrastructure in the civil engineering world. They're the things that would size up a culvert or a retention basin, different levee and dike systems, stuff like that. But there's also a lot of other ways that they can be used. So more in the environmental sciences, people are using them to kind of like estimate amount of geomorphological change that could occur, or different like hydraulic residence times on, say, a floodplain, something like that. And then it's also been correlated with a lot of things like species richness and diversity. So there's a lot of different ways that people can use flood hydrograph information. I come at it from a little bit more of this kind of hydraulic modeling, floodplain mapping lens, but there's a lot of ways you can use them.
We're going to take a little step forward because this
right.
light is very dramatic, the above light, and it's just making a little bit too much of a mask on your eyes, which I don't want. Oh, thank you, great. All right, let's try a little bit. Oh, that'll be a little bit better. Maybe I don't want to put that too much in your face. Okay, great. Cool. All right, I'll clip around that. So, if you're modeling these things, is it like playing a video game? You can set up a little town like The Sims and then flood it, and you hit the button, the dam breaks, and you see what happens. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tools that you
Give it a little tug. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep, great.
There we go. Yeah, so there's a lot of different tools that people use to model when it floods, where does the water go on the land surface. There's, here at University of Vermont, we have a pretty cool low complexity model that we've been using to map flood hazards across the state. But there's everything under the sun to these more, 2D defined, you've got a very prescribed amount of flow across a certain amount of duration, and where will it flood from that. That is certainly an interesting avenue that I like to look at, but this project that I've been working on here comes at it from more of a statistical modeling lens, and so we're looking at what have floods looked like in the past, and trying to use those to predict what they might look like in the future. And so this is more of a statistical approach on riverine flooding. So,
because there's going to be more flooding.
Yes.
As the climate crisis continues, more warming, more precipitation. Faster snow melt, earlier springs. Are you concerned about that? Did you get into this research because you were worried about it?
Yes, that's actually exactly why I went back to grad school. I was working as a consultant to the federal government and thought that some of the nationally standard models that are out there were not doing a very good job at capturing this kind of non-stationarity that we're seeing in the climate and in terms of flooding as well. And I wanted to know what other methods were out there to improve that science, or whether I could contribute to them as well. So this analysis that I've been working on here is especially interesting because we are, design flood hydrographs, people tend to focus on more of these like 500-year, 1,000-year events, 100-year events, stuff like that. I am also focusing on these more frequent events, which is where we're actually seeing a lot of the change. Flood events that used to be, 5-10 years in average recurrence are happening much more frequently. And so it's cool to focus on that kind of part of the extreme flood event spectrum. So.
Floods are a disturbance in the critical zone. Mm-hmm. They can change a lot of things, where rocks are, where people are, where animals are, where plants are. Talk a little bit about what a disturbance in the critical zone looks like from the flood's point of view.
It's interesting. I feel like I tend to actually give that opportunity to the people who know more about how their systems work. I prefer to give estimates on like where it's going to flood, how much it's going to flood, and when. And I guess I'm a little bit of an enabler in that from that point of view. I guess that's my answer.
That's great. That's great. So you're working with sort of the complex systems team inside the Critical Zone Collaborative Network's big data cluster with Donna and Kristen.
Yeah.
What is a complex system?
Yeah, I think that watersheds are a fantastic example of a complex system. There are a lot of these more scientific definitions that you can use to define a complex system, but the way that I see it in my work is that there's a lot of different ways that elements within your system can interact, and it's not always just a linear outcome response from a set of inputs. So, in a watershed context, that might be an inch of rain could behave very differently if it's falling on rain and snow than if it's just falling on forested landscape in the middle of summer. What is happening with the groundwater table at that same time, and how do all of those things coalesce to form these kind of emergent patterns in a stream response? So
I want to know.
Me too.
Last question for you. I'll let you get back over to your poster. Thank you for coming in and taking some time. What's next for you? Is it just more design floods, or where is your work going?
So University of Vermont actually just got a new project funded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They have something called the National Water Model, which can do live forecasting of flood events. The only thing is it's actually performing pretty poorly in especially mountainous and headwater states such as Vermont. And so Vermont got funded some money to research into that. So I'll be joining a team under Cairo at the University of Vermont, and we're looking into how flood waves propagate through river networks in the state of Vermont, and hopefully relating that to things like floodplain reconnection and different kind of morphological settings that rivers can exist within. So,
as a Vermonter, thank you so much for looking out for the safety of the community where I live. At least we can be prepared.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys.